Now with your weekend headlines, it's the ITV News.
Saturday night in. The biggest rail strikes this year cancel plans across the country. 50,000 workers walked off the job, causing chaos for sports events and trips out, with no sign of a resolution.
How many hours did the disruption delay your journey?
I think 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours, something around those lines, yeah.
I actually work in a coffee shop inside a station, so of course that's really affecting our business as well.
Also on the programme, tax cuts funded by spending cuts. Liz Truss promises she has a plan as she prepares to face her party at Conservative conference. Meanwhile, turning up the heat at home just got more expensive as new energy prices kick in today. And Arsenal dominate at the top, easily winning the North London derby.
This is ITV News.
Good evening. It's been an especially slow Saturday for millions trying to travel this weekend. 4 unions are staging the biggest rail strikes of the year. Around 90% of services have been cancelled in the long-running dispute over pay and conditions, disrupting sports fans, shoppers and even tomorrow's London Marathon. What's worse, there's still no sign of the strike action leading to an agreement. Amy Lewis reports on a day of misery for many.
On any other Saturday, London's King's Cross would be one of the busiest stations in the country. But today, you could hear a pin drop. Trains, like talks to resolve this latest strike, at a standstill, much to the misery of those trying and often failing to travel. How many hours did the disruption delay your journey?
I think 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours, something around those lines, yeah.
So I actually work in a coffee shop inside a station, so of course that's really affecting our business as well.
Do you support the strikes?
Yes,
How come?
just because they need more pay.
They work for different companies and are represented by different unions. But today, rail staff united in their biggest strike for years. There have been picket lines outside of train stations around the country today. More than 50,000 rail workers have gone on strike from 4 different unions. It is the first time they've ever done this on the same day. It's in a dispute over pay, jobs and working conditions. Network Rail say they've offered their workers a pay increase and under the deal wouldn't make any compulsory redundancies.
But we're part of the public sector, and actually the 4% pay offer that we've made for year one and another 4% that would happen in January next year, I think is absolutely in the same space as we're seeing awards for teachers, doctors and nurses, police officers.
But clearly the unions disagree, so therefore can we expect to see many more strikes?
Well, there is a real risk of that because, say, striking won't magic up additional money.
90% of train journeys have been cancelled across the country on the eve of the London Marathon, and as many are getting away for the weekend. Are you purposely targeting people going out and trying to have fun?
No, we're not targeting anyone. The tube is running at the moment in London and people can go about that. We're very sorry that the marathon has been disturbed and we don't want that to happen. We don't want those charities to suffer. But we must pursue this dispute. We should expect something that matches the cost of living in this country, yes.
The trains will be back moving tomorrow, but talks appeared to be going nowhere. More strikes are planned for next week. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
Well, it isn't just rail but mail that's been disrupted. More than 100,000 postal workers have walked out for a second day, hitting deliveries across the country. If they can't reach an agreement with Royal Mail, unions plan 19 more days of strikes this month and next. Those strikes aren't the only disputes the new Prime Minister has to worry about, as the row over the mini-budget looks like it'll dominate Conservative Party conference. Liz Truss is expected to arrive in Birmingham in the next hour or so, where she faces an uncertain reception. Today, one Cabinet member sparked fresh controversy by suggesting tax cuts could be paid for with spending cuts. From Birmingham, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
The final touches are being made at the Conservative Party conference amidst doubts about the government's commitment to raising benefits. Government supporters are trying to reassure.
It's very clear that every year the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions sets about a review that looks at where wages are, that looks at all the factors in the economy to set benefits for the following year. And I've seen no evidence whatsoever that suggests that benefits and pensions won't go up in the way that people expect them to.
But there is concern that the Prime Minister, who met her Danish counterpart this morning, is considering not raising benefits in line with inflation, in effect cutting them. And in today's Times, the Levelling Up Secretary, Simon Clarke, said Western Europe is just living in a fool's paradise whereby we can be ever less productive relative to our peers and yet still enjoy a very large welfare state. And this is what the now Home Secretary told me should be the focus of cuts when she was campaigning for the leadership.
I think we need to look at some of our government budgets. I think we spend too much on welfare. There are too many people in this country who are of working age, who are of good health, and who are choosing to rely on benefits, on taxpayers' money.
But after last week's mini-budget spooked the financial markets, the government's reputation for economic competence looks pretty mangled.
I'm very concerned that the Bank of England had to bail out their decisions within days. 65 billion.
Would you normally support the Conservatives?
Yeah, I've done. Yeah, for the last 20 odd years.
But you don't think this lot's doing a good job?
No, terrible now. Yeah, I think I might not vote for any of them.
As a Conservative Party member, what do you think that this is all doing to the reputation of your party?
I think it's just ruining it. Like, there's no way Conservative Party is winning.
So it would be a brave decision to announce a real-term cut in benefits so soon after cutting the amount of tax paid by the richest in society.
So, Carl, some in her party are pretty uneasy about her tax plans. What kind of welcome do you think Liz Truss is going to get?
Well, it'll be interesting to see, won't it? I mean, I'm sure in public it'll be pretty positive because apart from anything, many of her critics, including Rishi Sunak, aren't coming to this Conservative Party conference. And as you well know, it'll be on the fringes and the margins that we hear more voices of dissent. And I'm sure there will be some because many Tories are very uneasy and they know there are more unpopular decisions on the way. Last week, the government cut £45 billion of income with those tax cuts. They've now, in order to show on the public finances, got to find some spending cuts, and that's why there is such a question mark at the moment over the considerable benefits budget.
All right, Carl, from Conservative Party conference, thanks very much. Away from the political heat, it's now even more expensive to turn up your thermostat. Energy prices rise from today. A government cap on costs means a typical bill in England, Wales and Scotland should be around £2,500. But if you use more, you'll pay more. Ian Woods reports.
This first of the month brings an extra pinch and a punch. Increased energy costs just as autumn kicks in and we start using more to light and heat our homes. For many, the harsh reality hit only when the latest bill arrived.
Over 75% of all my income will now have to go on electricity. I can't afford that.
So what measures are you having to take on a daily basis to try to keep the cost down?
I don't use any central heating at all. I've turned off my immersion heater, so I've got no hot water. If I need to have a wash or a shave, I do so by boiling the kettle. Basically, it's make every single penny count.
The government's intervention may have capped the cost of each kilowatt hour of gas and electricity, but there's a warning not to be confused by the much quoted figure of £2,500 for the average bill.
Don't think your bill is never going to be higher than £2,500 because we've heard that some people are simply putting on the heating because they don't think it's ever going to be above that figure. It will be if you use more energy.
Smaller households or those with well-insulated homes will probably pay less than the average cost. And every electricity bill will automatically have £400 deducted over the next 6 months. But whatever your individual bill comes to, it's still likely to be double what you paid last year. Ian Woods, ITV News.
Police investigating potential human bones found on Saddleworth Moor say they've not found any identifiable remains. Excavations are continuing. It's thought any remains could belong to 12-year-old Keith Bennett, the final victim of Moor's murderers Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, and the only victim never to have been found. Sport now, and Premier League leaders Arsenal showed they mean business, ending Tottenham's unbeaten start to the season in the North London derby. Chris Scudder has the action. And before we go, take a look at these pictures. A huge building at a former steelworks came crashing down in a plume of smoke in what's thought to be one of the biggest controlled explosions in the UK for 75 years. More than 1.5 tonnes of explosives were used to level the plant in Redcar, changing the skyline which it has dominated for years. Amazing pictures there. And that's it. We'll be back with the late news at 10:30. Until then, have a very good evening.